Welcome to part two of Men's Health this week with Paul Elam. And in this section, we are dealing with talking about politics and the Trump effect around the world and its impact on men's mental state and mental health and political correctness, as well as relationships with yourself and relationships with women. Hope you enjoy it. Speaking of emotional health, I hear you have a new president down there.
Yeah, we have the newest president. He's so new you couldn't be any more new. So what you want?
Slightly new style, right?
Yeah. So you want my opinion about Donald Trump?
Sure.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way, Steve.
Or let's say Donald Trump's effect, or does Donald Trump have an effect on men's mental health, or can he?
I found it always good to not have any opinion on politics. I don't want to make a choice about, what I think is a good president or a bad president. I don't want to get behind any politician. I just sort of stay out of that mix. No. I think Donald Trump is the best thing to happen to my country in my lifetime. And that is not saying much because so many other presidents have been, we had a ex-CIA boss that was president. That's George Bush Sr. You can imagine what kind of things that a CIA director does and oversees. It's enough to give you cold shakes when you think about it. So, when I talk about Donald Trump, I don't want people to get confused for me as a Republican. I'm not. Certainly not. I am a conservative.
Do you vote?
Yes.
Do you mind
now? I do.
Who you vote for?
Donald Trump.
But do you generally vote Republican?
Yes.
So you're not a registered Republican?
No, I'm not. I generally didn't vote most of my adult life. After I figured out that I didn't think there was anything worth voting for. I'm an old classic liberal. I really believe in really crazy concepts like as much as you can do it, equal treatment under the law. I don't believe in sanctioned discrimination. I believe in the complete importance of the freedom of the individual from the state. I think the state's job is to protect our freedoms, not to control them, not to dole them out, but to protect freedoms that we're already entitled to.
We're already, just from hearing you talk, Paul, I think we're a long ways away from your ideal state.
Oh, sure. We're have been a long way away from it. And one of the many things that's killed it is political correctness. And one of the things that I love, I don't even want to say I love about Donald Trump is that he is an absolute kick in the nuts to political correctness. He's absolutely wasted it. People are speaking up now. Now you see politicians, was it David Lanham in Australia, called the prime minister a pussy when he tried to get him to apologize for telling a female senator to quit shagging so many men.
I heard that. That was quite a while ago. Was that 2-3 weeks ago?
It was like a month or so ago that all this happened. But I think in some way that all this stuff is connected. I think
that's a great example, though. It is a great example. As apparently, this politician really was banging all this string of guys, right?
Banging a string of guys and demonizing all men as rapists while she was doing it. Typical feminist slut.
Yeah.
And he called her out on it. And then Malcolm Turnbull, the prime minister of Australia, tried to play white knight and called out Lanham on it and told him to apologize. And he called him a fucking pussy and told him to shut up.
You think Donald Trump effect? That's the Donald Trump effect?
I think that's the Trump effect.
Yeah.
I do think it's, and I think it's bigger than that. I think this stuff, a lot of it started with Brexit. I think that there are populist sentiments growing that make a big difference. But when Trump came on the scene, he made it all completely real in front of the world. Here was a guy in America, a country that normally, if you're perceived as a misogynist, I can tell you who's, as somebody who's perceived as a misogynist uh, by a whole lot of people, they'll do damage to you. I could never run for office. I would absolutely get creamed in any election, and most politicians in the United States would just get waylaid if the label of misogynist stuck. Well, Donald Trump says on a hot mic about women, yeah, when you're rich and famous like me, you can do anything you want. They'll let you grab them by the pussy.
Yeah. And, and he walked away from that.
And he became president.
He became president, yeah.
He became president of the United States. And he didn't apologize for it.
Yeah. I think that's one of his strengths, is that he doesn't apologize. You know, when Pierre Trudeau, if you will allow me this one, and he's nothing like his son, but Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah, no kidding.
Pierre Trudeau, who was probably one of the most feared prime ministers in Canada's history, feared by his opponents. He once said in his biography written by I forget the guy's name now, but he said, "Never explain and never apologize." Two things: never explain, never apologize.
Yeah, code rules for alpha.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating about all this is that the American left, of course, they went ballistic over some of the things that he said. And a lot of politicians were doing their best to distance themselves. He didn't apologize. And the thing is, what he said is true. What he said is absolutely true about a whole lot of women. They will let you grab them by the pussy. As a matter of fact, if you're rich and famous and you don't grab them by the pussy, it will piss some of them off. And he sort of, I think, reflects America's craziness about sex back into the culture, rather than becoming an apologist, rather than groveling. Because I'm sure he had advisors around him during that whole thing telling him, well, you need to apologize to all women. And I'm sure, and of course he told them all to just basically fuck off.
He probably fired those advisors telling him that.
He's fired a lot of people.
He did fire a lot of people.
But he says what's on his mind. I mean, this is one of the things I just love, is he's an alpha male saying what's on his mind at all time. I find what he says sometimes embarrassing. Sometimes I go, oh, come on, man, you shouldn't have said that. But the fact of the matter is, that's who he is. And
yeah, you're not going to be surprised by, you'll be surprised by Donald Trump, but you're not going to be, what was that? I forgot what I was going to say now. Carry on. Sorry.
Totally. That's all right. No.
Another senior moment.
He will always surprise you. And even though he shouldn't, you should never be surprised, because he's a guy that's likely to say anything. It shouldn't be shocking. And he is shocking. And you know what? This society needs to be shocked.
Yeah.
All this snowflaking, all this left-wing belly aching and crying and moaning and victim politics and identity politics that are just dominating our universities. And he's ripping them apart. And he's even inspiring people like Lindsey Graham, who went on to Fox News, not Fox News, he was on CNN a few weeks ago, and the commentator there started criticizing him for supporting Trump's policies. And he's another Republican, and rather than cop out and act like most Republicans tend to act, which is like whipped dogs with their tails between their legs, he said right there on national television, if I'm going to work with President Trump to make this a better country, if you don't like it, I don't give a shit. That's it. Those were his exact words right there on television. And that was Trump. speaking.
And this was what I was going to say earlier, is that Trump is not hiding things. He's going to put what he thinks right out there. You're going to let you wail away at it, and he's not going to change direction.
And he
No matter
doesn't
how
care.
much wailing.
So how do you make a guy like that care? You don't. He's a billionaire. I mean, at the worst, he'll come out of this as a former president
Yeah.
worth
And still a
billions of
billionaire.
dollars. There's nothing anybody really can do, and he's not beholden. And this is where I don't understand the so-called conservative never-Trumpers. He's not beholden to all the special interests. He really is a threat to the swamp in Washington, D.C., to all the corruption in Washington, D.C. And you still had the most I ever hear from the left that is critical of him, the most cogent thing they can come up with is that they hate the man.
Yeah.
They name call him. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. He's a homophobe. He's a xenophobe. And
Yeah, there is an irrational hatred of him for sure.
yeah.
But that was showing its face before the election even. And, it kicked in super high gear as soon as he won. And it never let up since then.
And no, it's gotten worse, if anything. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hoping for our midterms to go the Republicans' way, not because I like Republicans, but because it's the best way to silence the left.
Yeah.
Is to stack the deck. I hope there's not a blue wave. I don't think there's going to be a red wave, but I hope there's not a blue wave. And I'm behind this guy. He shredded the Dear Colleague letter.
Has he really? I didn't hear that.
Yes, he did. He rescinded it.
The Dear Colleague, was that this is about campus rape or something?
Yeah, it was. Dear Colleague letter was thrown out there by President
right?
Obama's administration, Department of Education, telling schools that if they didn't, basically, it was so terrible. They were telling schools that if they didn't suspend due process, if they didn't believe the victim and prove they were aggressively going after all these sexual assault allegations, even ones without evidence, and if they cut off the accused student's ability to defend himself, it was, and told the schools they would not get federal funding, and it led to a rash of young men who were ousted from schools on false allegations of sexual assault, and which a lot of them have since filed lawsuits, but those are filed after their academic careers are destroyed. Well, Betsy DeVos, who is Trump's appointee as the head of the Department of Education, rescinded that letter.
Well, that's great news.
It was a good step in the right direction. Of course, now Trump has done other things I didn't like. His tax cuts, one of the components of his tax cuts, which I generally support, disallowed men who were paying alimony and child support to write that off.
Were they able to write it off before?
Yes, they were able to write it off before, and that was taken away.
That's a huge blow against men. Huge.
It is, and it was a terrible mistake. So
That's
I'm not
make
starry-eyed about the guy. He's not perfect. He is a white knight. And he's playing politics with the thing. But the thing is, who would we rather have? Hillary?
No, I mean, the whole world dodged a big bullet when Hillary lost, for sure.
Absolutely. And I can't think of another person right now that would make a better president for men than Donald Trump. I mean, maybe there were people that wouldn't be as bad as Hillary. But when it comes to most policies, he's made some big mistakes. But when it comes to most policies, I think he's generally been on the mark.
So what policies has he, or what has he done that is actually positive for men's lives?
Well, to me, one of the most positive things is he's removed the gag.
What's the gag?
The social gag from speaking your mind. And we're starting to see more politicians talk in plainer English. If you look at the campaigns of politicians in the United States, particularly Republicans that are trying to ride the Trump wagon, there was a congressman in Georgia running for Congress that did a commercial on TV where he gets in this big oversized monster truck. And he said, I had to buy a big truck in case I have to go myself and round up all the illegals. You would have never, ever seen a commercial like that before Donald Trump.
Right. Pretty politically incorrect for sure.
Very politically incorrect. And it needs to be done. I mean, one of our worst enemies is the fact that we can't talk about problems. I mean, we've been gagged so much as a culture. And, as you know, in Canada, it's even worse. That there is this prohibition on talking in plain English about problems and being honest about the nature of them.
And that's being exploded in a couple of different venues now, or a couple of different ways. Jordan Peterson is blowing a pretty big hole on this can't talk about stuff here in Canada, and it's spread to the U.S. as well. And there's been, just today I read 2 really good articles talking about the left as being on the defensive now. The article referenced and argued very well the points about the Jordan Peterson effect and the implications of Time magazine putting this racist bigot Sarah Jeong in as on the editorial board.
Oh man, is she ever a piece of work?
Well, you got to read some of the analysis that's now coming out about what this really means in our culture at this time, and what it means about the New York Times, but not just about the New York Times, but about the whole left movement, the whole left movement. The analysis now is starting to come out, and it's not good, and it's not good for the left. It's good for anyone who believes in freedom of speech, classical liberal values, not today's liberal values, which are anything but liberal.
Well, no, they're communists now. They're not liberals. I don't even want to insult liberals by calling these people liberals. They're leftist communists. And they need to get a lot more than they've been getting in terms of retaliation.
I'm going to put the link to these articles in the description of this video, because there's 2 that I read today that were really, really brilliantly written and very insightful about what this, which looks like a turning point in our culture, a real pivotal moment that's characterized by and explains the rise of Donald Trump, because this is a grassroots groundswell dissatisfaction with the oppressive nature of politically correct culture today, being driven by feminism, being driven out by the universities. The universities in the liberal arts have become a cesspool of oppressive, hateful, racist, bigoted teaching. And
the worst kind.
And this Sarah Young is a product of that. And she's accepted in those circles because that she does actually represent the thinking that's going on in our institutions of, I used to say higher education, but I call it higher indoctrination now, after the name of the video I did. Those places are, universities today have blown it so big that everything but the sciences needs to be completely eliminated, pretty much, in my mind. And the sciences need to be scrubbed clean of all these ideologues.
They need to be disinfected.
They do.
I want to go back for a moment, too. I think it's important to say, the change in the tax law for divorced men, terrible move, wrong move. Just a reminder, guys, men that don't get married don't have to worry about it.
Well, they do in a way, because you can have a kid and outside of marriage, and you're still going to be hit with the child support. And the child support used to be tax deductible too?
Well, as far as I know, yes, that was well, I'll try to dig up the article and get it into the low bar or into the description area for everybody to see. And I'll get that to you. As far as I know, yes, it was taxed. You could write it off your federal income taxes, and now you no longer can.
That's been that way in Canada for as long as I know, that we've never been able to write off child support or alimony in Canada. Maybe not never. I don't know never for sure, but not in my memory. It may have been one time when you could, but
Well, it probably wasn't for more than about 5 minutes. Um, and hopefully, as the marriage strike continues to grow, as MGTOW start continues to grow, it will force agents of the government to wake up and say, you know, if you ever want men to be interested in marriage again, you're going to have to provide incentives for that to happen.
yeah, there's not much incentive left for men to get married. It's all responsibility, all risk, and no incentive.
All risk, no reward.
Yeah.
And especially as loose as women are these days, um, I mean, they're passing out ass like crack in a bad neighborhood.
Well, I'm not sure that's going on in here in Canada. At least not in my surroundings. But
Oh man, you just haven't been to a slut walk.
that's all. That's just like everything else from feminists. It's hot air, no action, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It is what it is.
But anyways, you got a good point about marriage. But I personally, I don't think men need to swear off some of the MGTOW movement, and if we can segue there a little bit, is a little too extreme for my thinking. This idea that and I'm not saying that it's the extreme element doesn't have its place for some men. I just don't think there are very many men who would be happy in that extreme version of MGTOW where you hear them preach that have absolutely nothing to do with women whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of guys in MGTOW that are men that are stuck in red pill rage. I mean, you can see it in their comments, plain as day. And the thing is, they get there honestly. We send them there. This culture sends them into red pill rage. Guys that have, you know, a lot of them are not young men that have never had any experience with women. Most of them are guys that have been through relationships, been through a divorce, had kids, pulled the knives out of their back and said, screw this, never again. And a lot of them are really angry. And I think that a lot of them are angry enough that they swear off women completely, and they develop a mindset that says all women can't be trusted. They're all terrible. And it's, in one way, it's understandable. Another way, it's hard to blame them. The fact of the matter is that this culture, the whole of Western culture, produces untrustworthy women. It produces narcissistic, entitled brats and princesses in the deal. Now, that said, do I think that the healthiest way to live is on your own? No, I don't think so at all. I don't think that we're wired to fly solo. So it creates a dilemma. You know, how do you maintain a connection with women? But I think most of these guys that are MGTOW monk will probably not be MGTOW monk forever.
It's a phase, you think, where their anger phase, so to speak, that we
Well,
talked about.
that's what I think. I think that is and again, it doesn't explain all of them. There's some guys that aren't angry at all and are just like, I just don't want anything to do with women. It's too much trouble, too much bother, too much of an infringement on my freedom. I don't want to have to feel responsible to a relationship or to feel like I owe a woman anything. I don't want to have to explain where I was last Tuesday to anybody. And there's men that are just that way, and I think they're perfectly happy that way. Most men, I think, that are MGTOW monk, though, are wounded. And they got there genuinely through no fault of their own. Because I still believe that most men want to be connected to women. I think also that most men especially blue pill men, not red pill men, but blue pill men, which is almost all men, have a terribly distorted ideas about who women are and
Yeah, it's
what
almost a
relation.
caricature of a human being, their view of women.
Yeah, and
There's
they don't
life,
see
everything's
things
nice,
realistically, and they
passion.
have visions in their head that if I just love her enough, if I do enough for her, that she'll treat me great. And that's not the way that crap works with a lot of them. They don't understand hypergamy. They don't understand women's nature. And consequently, they don't understand how to hold their own with women. And then they get burned, and then they end up MGTOW.
Yeah. Now I can understand that and I accept that and I've met men who are not really driven towards women that much, and for them a celibate lifestyle, it seems to be what they want and need and get satisfaction from it. But what about those men who really want that intimate life with women but are, say, MGTOW monks right now? But they still, a lot of these men, maybe they're trying to kind of pressure that down or repress that in themselves because they're in the rage stage. But do you have any advice for those kind of guys?
Not a
Or
thing. Not a
no?
thing. The rage will pass, and nothing I can say is going to make it pass any faster than it's going to pass. I mean,
Okay, well, let me put this to you, Paul. Like, how would they re-engage with women differently from they'd had in the past? Like their engagement with women in the past was dysfunctional, ended badly, didn't work for them. Our culture makes that even likely to happen again. If they do want to re-enter that part of their life, how can they do it more safely?
well, I know what I recommend to all men. I'm not talking about this group or any other subset, but I recommend to all men all the time, and I always have, or at least as long as I've been red pilled, is that the way you engage with women is number one, with a clear vision of who and what women are. Number two, a clear vision of what your values are and a willingness to live by your values and a lack of willingness to sacrifice them for anybody or anything, and a willingness to let go of a woman if she can't handle it.
That I think is the biggest one.
Yeah,
That last one is, I think, where I've been stuck with that one in the past. And I think a lot of
it's
guys
hard.
fall there. They're just not willing and able to let go or to walk away, as I think of it, as walking away. Whether it's with women or with a job or with any life situation, I think if you're not mentally prepared to walk away, you've imprisoned yourself. Because any situation can go south. And if it goes south and you can't fix it, if you're going to stay chained to that situation while that boat sinks, you're going down with it.
I've been saying for 10 years, Steve, go back in my writing, you'll find it over a period of 10 years, is that the number one primary measure of a man's mental health is his ability to say no to a woman.
You know, another man said that. Joseph Campbell once said, and I forget which book it is, but he wrote that a man becomes a man only when he's able to say no to women.
Oh, well, I might have picked that up from him and not remembered it, or just maybe it's a universal truth that occurred to me in my red pill process. But I firmly believe that is that if a man is interested in his mental health, and to say, and by no, I mean like fuck no,
Yeah.
saying no.
And in
Hey,
order to,
buy me
oh,
this ring. No.
but right there, you're touching on the exact thing that we were both just talking about a minute ago, is that in order to be able to say no, you have to be prepared to lose the relationship. Because
Absolutely.
that's what you're risking. When you say no, oftentimes that's really what you're putting on the table. You're risking, okay, I'm saying no to this. That's like saying, I'm calling your bluff.
Because and again, when you're honest with yourself, and men are notorious for lying to themselves about who they are and about how women are, A woman's idea of a relationship with a man is a man who says yes. That's what it's all predicated on control, on being able to get a man to do what she wants, to spend his money the way she wants him to spend it, to earn a certain amount, to do everything from how he puts his shoes on in the morning to how they make a living. She wants control over that, and she wants a yes every time. And so much of the average woman's expectations in relationship are based on that contract, on that agreement, that a man is going to say yes when she wants something. And what I tell men all the time is that you better be willing to say fuck that and say no and let her go and tell her if she needs a yes man, she came to the wrong place.
Now, what's that group name there? That those guys, pickup artists. Pickup artists would call that whole thing the shit test, and that ultimately they would say that women ultimately don't respect that yes man. Anyways, the guy who says, sorry,
they're right too. So, but in the end, women don't want a man that they respect. They may have quick sex with a man that they respect, but long-term trustworthy relation, they want a man that says yes.
They want.
I remember watching a program on couples that had been married for 50 years. And this was like I watched this 20 years ago. But they did this PBS special on all these dozens of couples that had been married more than 50 years. And they went through and they asked the women, what does it take to make it work? And they asked the men, what does it take to make it work over 50 years? Over and over again. You know what the men said? Give her anything she wants. Over and over and over. This is
what slave mentality, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is the thought process of a guy on the plantation. But over and over and over again, in the predominant number of marriages that had lasted over 50 years, the guy's mentality was, you better give her what she wants. And do I think those guys were respected? No. I don't think they were respected at all.
So this thought that comes to mind here, I remember Aaron Pizzey once controversially saying that women have a domesticating effect upon men. I don't think she intended it this way, but what I'm hearing there is like the horse trainer breaking the horse. That kind of domesticating effect.
I wasn't aware of Aaron saying that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that any woman would say this. I mean, Christina Hoff Sommers was saying it. Tammy Bruce has said it in her Feminism 2.0, that women have a civilizing effect on men, like we're a bunch of brigands and ne'er-do-wells that need a woman to clean our act up.
The image that comes to my mind when that whole scenario is the wild, noble horse with spirit, whose spirit gets broken by the domesticating process, and now that horse does whatever its owner says whenever its owner says it. So men out there, don't get broken. Don't get domesticated. Own your own self. And if you're in that phase, think about saying no and changing things up.
Should say it once and say it often. Keep saying it. No is the grandest word in a man's vocabulary. It really is. It's what lets you keep yourself in a relationship.
Okay, Paul, having just said that the number one thing in all these surveys that make a marriage last is a man saying yes all the time, and probably the women said the very same thing. The man said yes, that's why all the time, that's why I'm with him. What do you think? Can you make it? Can you make a healthy marriage with a guy who stands his ground and says no?
I believe you can. I believe that there is a small percentage of women who can be trained.
Now, are you saying trained in the same way that a woman domesticating a man to say yes all the time? Are you flipping the tables there, or are you going to say that this is a more egalitarian?
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying trained like a dog. And I, believe it or not, I don't mean that to be insulting. One of the things that we need to do is accept the reality, all of us, men and women, that we train people how to treat us. We let people know what our limits are and what our limits aren't. We let people know in our relationships what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. And we do that by reacting, by setting limits and boundaries and saying no. That is a normal part of human interaction, is that we train people how to treat us. I'm
going to assume, I'm going to assume that you're meaning then that both the man and the woman should be saying no or yes at whatever they're.
Well, I'm saying, man, if you're a man and you can't handle a woman that says no, man, grow the fuck up. Just grow the fuck up. If you think you got to get a yes to everything you want out of a woman,
I don't think I've ever met that man.
No, I don't think
I've never taken no from a woman.
I believe that there are men out there that are like that. Not very many, but if you're one of them, dude, whatever. Go watch another program because this ain't for you. But also, I don't have any use for a woman that can't handle a no. No use at all. And I don't mean just as a girlfriend or anything else. I mean in life in general. If a woman can't handle hearing that I'm not going to do something for her, I don't give a fuck. Get the fuck out.
Well, Paul, aren't you describing the nature of any relationship, whether it's platonic man-man, woman-woman, or platonic man-woman? In all relationships, not just your intimate relationships, you should be able to say no or yes to whatever you're most comfortable with.
Which is exactly why I tell guys, if you have any sense at all, you'll treat women like men, like you would a man. With men, like, in my male friendships, we're relatively generous with each other. Hey, man, I'll pick up the tab this time. You get it next time. No sweat. No big deal. Here, you need some help with something? Sure, I'll help you. You're moving, I'll help you, whatever. Well, we shouldn't say moving because even best of friends have a tendency not to show up on moving day.
Moving is the worst.
It's the worst. But generally, you'll help each other out as friends in times where there's help required. And when you don't want to help, you say, I can't. I'm too busy. I got to work. I got this. I got that. Can't be there for you this time. Women aren't used to there being any excuse that is satisfactory. You've got to work. Well, tell your boss you need to help.
But that's really within the intimate relationship part. And I'm going to throw this out there. Isn't the intimate dimension of that relationship, or the fear of losing it, isn't that the motivating force that causes men to not say no appropriately, to not set?
It's all about fear of loss. All of it. All of it is that they won't say no because they won't stand their ground. They won't defend themselves against a woman's crazy, wild allegations and arguments. Because women they have a tendency to say really horrible things during arguments with men, and men won't defend themselves against that. Because they're afraid of losing the woman. She knows, most women know they got the trump card between their legs, that they're the ones in control of the relationship. And it's why I've tried to tell women for a long, long time, look, you've got it made. You can have the greatest relationship in the world. All you got to do is treat this guy with respect, take a no every once in a while, be a decent human being, and he will give you the fucking world. In most cases, that's the way men are. But even that's not good enough for a lot of women. It's just not good enough. So, and they know they got this trump card, and they know they can manipulate him. They know that, there's most guys, a woman can say, you're not sleeping in the bed tonight. You're kicked out. And most guys will tolerate that. There's very few guys that'll say, bitch, if you want to sleep alone, you know where the couch is. This is my bed. I'm coming there. You don't own where I sleep. It doesn't even occur to men they can ever say that because they're fear of losing. And what I'm saying is that there's a percentage of women out there that won't leave. There's a percentage of women, a small number, that recognize that there's truth in this. and that they need to change if they want a strong man around them, or at least that strong man. And they're welcome to go somewhere else if they can't handle it. But most of the weakness in relationships is men.
Yeah. Unwillingness to face, to deal with that fear of losing that intimate relationship.
Yep.
You have to risk it. To have a healthy relationship, you have to be able to risk losing that relationship. It's almost a paradox, wouldn't you say?
You should never be in a relationship with a woman who doesn't understand from the beginning that you will let her go before you will sacrifice your values. From the word go, as you're getting to know women, you should let them, if it's true about you. If it's not, if you're just a weak dude that can't say no to a woman that's too afraid of losing her to even have your values, then all right, enjoy whatever you get in life. I don't wish it on anyone. But if you've got values and you're willing to live by them, like values are, I'm going to earn my money and keep most of my money, and I'm not going to just squander it to make a woman smile at me, tell them from the beginning, I'm not going to sacrifice my values for a woman ever. And if they believe you and stay, you got to keep her. Possibly.
Well, that sounds like a good plan. So, Paul, we've covered a lot of ground today, as usual.
Yep.
You got any final thoughts? Because I'm just thinking we should probably wrap it up. It's getting quite late.
Well, other than make America great again.
Yes, right. Don't forget your fedora.
Make fedoras great again. No, we've covered a lot. We've talked nearly an hour and a half.
Terrific. It's always been an interesting conversation, Paul. It just flies by like that for me, our conversations. So I'll just thank everyone for watching again, and please tune in again, probably within the next week or two. We haven't got a regular schedule on this. And while you're out and about in the next week, pick up a fedora.
One of these, folks.
Of the gods.
If you want to be perfect in red pill wisdom, and I recommend a black one, but the gray with the black band is pretty good too.
The important thing is it's a fedora, and a fedora scares the crap out of feminists, obviously.
Yes, it does.
Good night.